You're listening to The Artist Athlete, episode 94. This podcast is dedicated to CIRCUS. It's a place for professionals in the industry to share their stories, viewpoints, and information, and a place for outsiders to get a sneak peek into this world. Hey, friends, fans, and foes. Do we like this? It's weird not to say, hey, friends, fans, and enemies, but friends, fans, and foes is like this alliteration. I kind of dig it. Anyway, I'm Shannon McKenna. I'm the host of the Artist Athlete podcast, and I am the founder of theartistathlete.com. And if you got the friends, fans, and foes reference, you are probably a Patreon of mine. It's December now. All of November, I have been on a break from producing the podcast to do a little bit more artist athlete projects. But I have been hard at work on the Patreon, creating all sorts of fun, totally random content that people have been loving. So if you want to support the podcast or are curious about what else is going on in the artist athlete world, head on over to patreon.com/theartistathlete and sign up today. Also, it's worth mentioning that this podcast was recorded in October, and that's because during this podcast, we talk about how all the gyms in Montreal are closing again, and you can listen to me have like a full-on mental breakdown during this interview. I hope everyone out there is staying safe, and I hope my interview today with the amazing Olaf Triebel will help you feel a little bit better about whatever situation you're in. I feel a lot better than I did while I was giving this interview. As I said, my guest today is Olaf Triebel. Olaf didn't send me a bio, and I didn't ask him for one. So I am just going to tell you what I know about Olaf Triebel. A lot of it you'll hear in the interview. He is a hand balancer from Germany. He went to the National Circus School in Montreal and afterwards worked with a ton of amazing companies. And the one that he is best known for working for and has influenced the most of his work is the Seven Fingers. For more information on their work, you can listen to episode 78 with Gypsy Snyder or episode 80 with Isabelle Chassé. We also mentioned the CHAMÄLEON Theater, which is in Berlin, and the artistic director is Anke Politz, and her interview is episode 45, I believe. Yes, episode 45. But now, listen up. Here's my interview with Olaf Triebel. Oh, and spoiler alert, if you have a show booked anytime in the near future in Lyon, France, there's a part of this interview you might want to cover your ears. Olaf Triebel, welcome to the Artist Athlete podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yay. Can you start by explaining a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay.
Who are you, Olaf?
How long do we have? No, I'm just kidding. Well, I am a 40-year-old former hand balancer who changed sides about 4.5 years ago, and am now working more as choreographer, director, artistic director, or artistic counselor, or acrobatic counselor, or acrobatic coach on different shows and projects all around the world, actually. I've started very young. I've started when I was 10 years old in a recreational program from the local church in the hometown in Germany called Hagen, where I grew up. But that was really just a tiny little room where we basically had a couple of books on how to juggle 3 balls and how to do basic like adagio acrobatic. That's how it started. And then it became just this famous snowball of more and more and bigger and just go watch circus shows in Germany and then try to remember what they did and then just try it, because that was before YouTube and Instagram and that wasn't an option yet. And once I graduated from school in Germany, I went to university for 3 days, and it was very clear that I will not go back a fourth day. It just wasn't, I couldn't do it. Like, I was done sitting and taking notes and listening. And then I talked to my parents and I said, well, what if I would audition for a circus school? And they were very open and they said, sure, I mean, that's not a problem. But they also kind of a little bit brushed it off, like didn't take it too seriously, but they said, absolutely, if you get in, we will support you. And then that was it. And a couple of months later, I was full on training and sending all that stuff that you need to send to the École Nationale de Cirque à Montréal, to the Montreal Circus School. And then one day in April in the year 2000, I got a big envelope, everything written in French, that a friend actually had to translate because back then I didn't speak a word of it. And I got in. And then I just moved to Canada, and that's how it all started.
And you're located now in Montreal, yes?
I never really left. I moved to Montreal for the school. And then once I graduated, I started working with the Seven Fingers pretty much right away. So I just stayed here and then never really left. I mean, obviously you leave for tours and for shows, but I always, it's now 20 years that I consider Montreal my home, actually.
You mentioned earlier this really interesting thing where you said you were changing sides.
Yes.
I kind of like this idea. Can you explain a little bit more, like what you mean?
I mean, it's really, it switched from working in front of the curtain to working behind the curtain. That's pretty much what I mean when I said I switched sides. But I started doing that already while I was still performing. I was in the lucky situation that I've been performing not all of my career, but a lot of my time with the Seven Fingers in all kinds of different shows and events. And pretty early on, when the company was still very, very small, they had enough confidence in me to send me to Berlin with Traces before Traces was actually even touring, I think. And I might be wrong, but I think that was 2005, maybe beginning of 2006, before they officially opened the show. They went to Berlin to the CHAMÄLEON Theater for 2 months just to really run it and get experience on stage. And we had just finished a run at the CHAMÄLEON with a version of Loft, the first show of the Seven Fingers. And because I think it was just multiple factors, like I just came from that theater, so I knew everybody. I've been to circus school with all the 5 original members of Traces. I was 2 years above them, but still, you know them. I'm German, so I speak the language. I think that helped also a little bit. So I just went there with them as like the tour/artistic director for 2 months to make sure that they're fine. And I really, really actually liked it. Obviously, I preferred being on stage, but even then already I thought it was interesting, even for an artist, to just understand what other part there actually is to make sure a show is running. And it made me appreciate a lot of things later in my career, actually a lot. And I've been telling often people not necessarily to switch sides right away, but to like do a tour in Europe, like Switzerland, Germany, or France, with a traditional circus where you sleep in a caravan, where you have to set up the tents, where you just really understand where circus actually comes from, and then really appreciate when you're in one of those shows that are touring the globe, when you stay in hotels and everything is taken care of for you. You get an email of when to be at the airport and your ticket is there and you just show up. So I think it's interesting when you actually really can have a look at both sides, and it just you really learn to appreciate the other side of things.
What's your favorite part of the side of performing?
I mean, I guess it's very self-centered. Just it's the applause, the adrenaline that comes with it.
Okay.
It's the whole. I mean, honestly, I think it's the whole thing. It starts with warm up with your 10 friends. I mean, ideally, your friends that you're on tour with. The whole, yeah, I think it's really everything. It's a mixture of everything. But the thing that I really miss right now while not performing, it's really that adrenaline that is very specific that you can't fake from bungee jumping or running or whatever else you do to get a little kick. It's different for sure. That's the thing I miss the most.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like because it's like all of the adrenaline of like bungee jumping, but also with acceptance or this feeling of like love from the audience.
Yes,
Do you
it's
know?
really no, I absolutely agree. It's really a mix of it's the and I really think it's I mean I'm not sure what the right word is. I'm looking for it right now, but it's
I don't know if in English they have a word. Is there a word in German or French
yeah,
for
I
like
mean
this
in German you might say egoistisch. It's like egoistical. No, that's not a word, is
hmm
it?
egotistical is
Yeah,
the word.
egotistical.
But egotistical has like a negative connotation
Yeah,
to it
that's why I don't
in
think that
English.
it's the right word, because it's
Yeah.
really just this feeling that is only there for you. It might be there for the people next to you, but that feeling that you have doesn't affect what the other people are feeling. I don't know how to explain it. It's this weird feeling, a mixture of payoff for the years and years of work you put into it. Yeah, it's this very concrete payoff. It's very direct. It's the one time where you can actually really grab it if you're not there for the money, because then you just want the money. But if it's not the money, the real payoff is really the applause at the end of an act, or a laughter you create in the audience, or at the
Mm.
end of the show. Like it's just like one example I can give is, and I hope I'm not stealing a punch for anyone who will ever perform there, but there is a festival in France that is called Les Nuits de Fourvière, I believe, and it's in Lyon, if I'm not wrong. It's a huge outside festival in like an old amphitheater. And there is thousands of people, and they have people from Sting with a philharmonic orchestra to circus shows to dance shows to whatever. And obviously you perform when it's dark. So you get an idea, and there is a crowd, and there is probably 1,500 to 2,000 people in the audience. And because it's a real ancient amphitheater, they basically hand out seat cushions for people to sit on the stone stairs. And
Oh, cool.
at the end of the show, when you come, or when I was there with C with the Seven Fingers years ago, and we had no idea what to expect. And when we come back for the real bows at the end of the show, and the lights go on a bit more, we were all like, what is this in the air? What is happening? And then literally 1,500 to 2,000 seat cushions would hit us. When people like the show, they basically use this cushion as frisbees, and they throw it towards the stage. And that was one of those moments that were just completely surreal. Like we're like,
Wow.
we couldn't really understand. And that was one of the moments where you really full on get like goosebumps everywhere, and you go, yes, that's exactly why we're doing this.
Did nobody warn you that you were going to have seat cushions thrown at you?
I think, no, they don't. But it's because they know kind of what strong of a moment this is. So if they warn you, they kind of take that
Hmm.
really, that feeling of like what is going on away from you. That's why I hope that I don't spoil anything for anyone who will ever perform there.
Oh, I see.
But it's
I'll add a spoiler alert at the beginning of the show to make sure.
Add a spoiler alert, because it was really one of those things that I will remember for the rest of my life, that were just so unexpected and just insane.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And so to go to the other side of the curtain now, what's your favorite thing, or what's your favorite thing about being backstage or being part of the creative crew?
I mean, there's
creative, I guess, isn't accurate, because I feel like the artists on stage are obviously also creators, but to be behind the curtain.
Behind the curtain. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it depends really on which job you're doing, because there are so many different jobs that there are. Like, I really love working on projects that have a deadline. I'm not always a big fan of creations that go on forever, and I for some reason, maybe that's the German side of me that just comes through. I love it when there is a deadline and things have to be done, and then just dive in and really try to work efficient, be creative, obviously, but still not lose track of where to go and when the show or the happening or the deadline is. But it's also, in general, just working with artists is just, it's insane in the best possible way. Like, it's such a luxury to just have, I mean, a single artist, not even talking if you have 20 or 30 artists that are just willing to try every crazy idea that is in the room. It's just crazy that what people can do, and that really most of the artists are always motivated in trying new things and open for ideas and want to be inspired and want to get new ideas. And the energy in a rehearsal studio is just, I mean, especially right now with people not actually really working. When we went back into the rehearsal studio for the first day with the 10 artists that we have for the project that we're working on at the moment, we all just couldn't believe that we actually get to work and hang out and be active together. So that's just, that's always something.
Yeah. So you started in your performing days, you started as a hand balancer, or you were a hand balancer.
Yes.
Tell me about your trajectory there. Have you been a hand balancer since you were 10?
No. Well, as a kid, really, that was really a program where there was no teacher involved. The people running this program were really just people who would work for the local church, who were usually just doing like after school programs. We would have training 2 hours Friday afternoon after school. And then in the summer, for, I believe it must have been between 2 or 3 weeks, they would actually rent a very small what is the English word for a circus? That holds up the tent. Yeah, but the two poles.
The tent poles.
Yeah. Is there another word in English for it?
I mean, I know that the top of the tent is the cupola.
Yeah,
but that's like Italian.
It doesn't really matter. But it was a tiny, tiny circus tent that would maybe hold 250 people.
Okay.
But they would also have former trailers that workers would use for their equipment to store, that we would actually renovate throughout the year to put like bunk beds in there. So you would have 10 kids sleeping in this tiny little trailer for 3 weeks. And there were about...
Wait, and your church organized all of this?
Yeah.
Was there some like mastermind who just really loved circus and was like, hey kids, like we're going to renovate this trailer today?
There was really this particular one guy who really pushed for it in the beginning. It wasn't really supposed to be a thing that lasts. It was a thing that they created for like one summer for kids who didn't go anywhere for the summer vacation, who had to stay home. And everybody was a total beginner. And it was literally like the highlight of the show was someone who learned to juggle 3 balls, or there was a trapeze, but we didn't really know what to do with it. So it was originally just for like friends and family to come. There were like 2 shows and that was it. But then there were so many people. I mean, obviously it was reported in the local newspaper, and some strangers would come and watch the show as well. And the feedback was just so big, and so many family, including my mom, because when I heard about it, I just that's exactly what I need to do. So a lot of people just asked where you can apply for this thing. Will it keep going? So they decided to make it a year-round project. But it was really just basically playing circus in the dumbest but best way at the same time. It was really just like going to see a circus show, and you would see a fire breather or a juggler or a hand-to-hand duo or a trapeze artist, and you would just try to remember what they were doing. And the next Friday, we would go to the studio and try things. Or we would do things like, after the show, we would just knock on caravans from the circus and try to talk to circus artists and ask them if they're maybe willing to come to our rehearsal on Friday afternoons to show us a couple of tricks. And surprisingly, actually, a lot of people somehow agreed to just hang out with a bunch of 12-year-olds and just teach them a little bit about circus, which was absolutely amazing.
Oh, I bet they loved it.
So that's, yeah, I mean, some loved it. Some just thought it was weird, which I get. Like, it's really, because back in the days that like children's circus wasn't really a thing yet. It was almost before that movement started. But I think we just weren't shy about it, and we were just really ballsy and just knocking on people's doors and asking them if they would come train us. So during that period, we would all really do everything. So from juggling to building our own little, I don't know what they're called, like those nail beds that you can lie on, at the fakirs, the fire shows, and walking on glass and spitting fire, trying Russian bar, even though we had no idea. We used like big wooden sticks to just stand on and balance on. And like, it was really a play atmosphere while trying to figure out circus. That's how it all started. So I was able to do handstands, to get back to the question that you actually asked. Like, I trained handstand for fun in my living room. But when I got accepted into the Montreal Circus School, which I auditioned for with a hand-to-hand act, actually, I was always the tiniest kid. And my best friend back in the days, we did a lot of hand-to-hand together, and he was like always a head taller, or at least when we started. And once I was 16, 17 years old, all of a sudden I really grew, and I ended up being a head taller than he was. But yeah, I auditioned with a hand-to-hand act, and then my friend didn't want to go to circus school. So when I got accepted, I wanted to do hand-to-hand, not realizing that with 6'2", I am a giant when it comes to hand-to-hand flyers. So there was obviously no one at the school for me to be porting me. So I switched completely, and I ended up doing swinging trapeze for an entire year before I then finally decided, with talking to the teachers and friends, that that's just too complicated to rig, and that I would enjoy handstands probably way more. So I switched and then did handstands. And my coach in the beginning, she would just put me up against the wall for the first couple of months, because my line was so bad from training by myself and not understanding what you actually need. So yeah. I could do them, but they were so wrong that I basically had to unlearn everything that I knew and then start from scratch again.
You're a 6'2" hand balancer?
Yeah, I'm a 6'2" hand balancer. Well, I was a 6'2" hand balancer.
I mean, you didn't get shorter, and you still stand on your hands, so...
Yeah, it's true. I still, from time to time, I still stand on my hands. Absolutely.
Yeah, let me ask you about this for a moment. Like, what? Because I find this sometimes, especially actually, not to generalize, but to generalize with hand balancers. People
Yeah.
are very reluctant to call themselves hand balancers. What is that about? Because aerialists have no problem. I think that most aerialists are like, yes, I'm an aerialist. I'm an aerialist.
No,
Hello, everybody. Nice to meet
I'm,
you. I'm an aerialist. But
see,
there's like a shyness, or I want to say it's a humility, actually, that I think hand balancing creates in you.
I'm like, honestly, I'm not sure. I was never shy to call myself a hand balancer. Just now, I wouldn't call myself a hand balancer anymore because I haven't performed in forever. And honestly, the last time
Okay.
I was on one hand, that was when I was with a show in California a year and a half ago that I took care of. And during warm up, there was a hand balancer in a show. So I just jumped on her canes and I was like, oh, check. Yeah, it's still working. Not doing crazy things, but I can still spend some time on one hand. And that was pretty much it. But yeah, in general, I think there is something about hand balancing that is a bit like juggling in the mindset. Like you have to be able to do the like 10 movements over and over and over again in your corner with focusing only on yourself. There is something
Hmm.
meditative about it. I always call it that's my yoga. Like I tried to do yoga, but I never could get into it because I felt like that's already what I'm doing when I'm on my hands, where I'm constantly scanning.
Hmm.
Okay, where is my hip? Where are my abs? What is my knee doing? Is my shoulder? I'm constantly scanning and double checking my entire body. So once I'm done with handstand, I need to then play tennis or volleyball or run around. I need to get rid of that active energy. So I
Hmm.
think there is something, yeah, just very zen and a little bit. I'm not sure if it's OCD, but hand balancers are very particular. Like you would rarely find someone who would train on the floor if it's like wooden beams that would just put the hands diagonal on the beam. Like you would always be very square in what you're doing, and everybody has their own routine of how they warm up, how they start training. There is just something, yeah, very zen and again crazy in a good way because you need to be able to just be with yourself for a long period of time.
You teach too now.
Yes, I teach.
You have some students.
I teach quite a bit, which I really, really love, to be honest. I couldn't do it full time because for me, it takes a lot of energy. Not that I'm not complaining at all, but I couldn't. Like, I'm always still wondering how coaches at the National Circus School who do that full time, who teach 6, 7 hours every day, 6 days a week for years and years and years, that would drive me crazy. But I love teaching. And one of the things that I love most about, because when we talked earlier, you talked a bit about like ballet and how circus is like their own little community. The one thing that I love the most about circus, which for me is the complete opposite to ballet, is that I'm really trying to adapt a technique that has been there for a lot of years and adapt it onto different bodies instead of like ballet where they say, no, there's one way of doing it. And if your body can't do it, then you're not meant to do ballet, which caused a lot of frustration from
Hmm.
people. So what I really love about circus is that most coaches that I know really just go, okay, there is a certain technique to do things. But if this technique
Hmm.
doesn't work for your body, let's get creative and figure out how we can adapt that technique to make it work for you. So when you teach, it's not that you have your 20 exercises that you just give to people and that's it. It's constantly analyzing someone's body and someone's strength and weaknesses and figuring out how to push students individually further. And that is just a lot of fun.
Yeah, and as a 6'2" hand balancer, do you have any advice for the tall hand balancers of the world? Like, are there any things that you found or any techniques or approaches that kind of like work better because of height?
Oh, I wish I could say yes, but Like, don't
But
give
there's
up.
no magic.
No, you can do it. Just don't give up. No, I mean, no, there's really no magic. For sure, like at first sight, there is a disadvantage just because all the angles work against you when it comes to press ups to handstand, and you probably weight a little bit more than the shorter ones, and your muscles are leaner and longer and not that compact. But like once you're performing, to see someone tall perform with long lines, and it's yeah, no, I mean it's just go for it. Don't let anyone discourage you. You can do it. Keep training. Keep doing the same exercises over and over again.
Keep training. I love it. Do you still train? You must.
I train, but honestly, it's not circus training anymore. Now I just go to a regular gym most of the times and just do really, like, I would say probably 80% regular weight training, and then there is maybe a 20% of exercises that I kept from when I was training myself, when it was more circus handstand specific training. And then I like throw a couple of handstands in there just to keep it and to do it for endurance and for pleasure. But real circus training, I haven't really done in forever. Also, my body, like when I stopped, it wasn't a choice where I was like, oh, I'm done performing, I'm just going to stop. It was that slowly my body of the last 2 years of performing gave me already pretty strong signals that it was time to change some things. Like my back was very, very flexible when I was younger. And then I used it a little bit with handstand. Now I'm reluctant to use the word contortion because I would never ever consider myself a contortionist, but I had like a flexible back, and I used that flexibility in my act. But that's then also what eventually became the weakness in my body was definitely the lower back. So after a couple of injuries there, I just went, it's not worth it to push it 3 more years, but then maybe not be able to play tennis anymore or run or play volleyball. So I decided, look, I still can do whatever I want to do. And I had a fun career, and I did basically everything and probably more than I ever dreamed of. So it was just time to stop and not torture my body any longer.
Yeah. And like you said, like it sounds like your transition from in front of the curtain to behind the curtain was already happening.
Yeah, that
so
was.
you could
Sorry,
take it.
yes, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. That was really, I mean, I'm so thankful for that I wasn't in this situation where I had an injury out of nowhere and then wouldn't know what to do or how to start the career behind the curtain, because it's not just something that happens that you call someone and you will work full time behind the curtain. That's just not how things work. So it was really a great situation that I already done that kind of work before. So when I talk to companies and let them know that, look, I'm done performing and I'm now ready to really take on a full-time job on the other side, they were people right away that went, great, here's this project, here's that project. Because I could not even imagine what would have happened if there was really just an injury from one day to the next and then your entire life changes. Yeah, I mean, I would be depressed for sure. That would have not been a fun moment in my life. So I'm really, really thankful that that wasn't the case. And that's maybe a thing that I would tell people in general is, like, you're not invisible or invincible. What do you say? Invincible?
Invincible is when you can't be destroyed. Invisible
Yeah,
is when you can't be
no,
seen.
you're not invincible. Like, even when
So both are true. You're also not
both,
invisible.
yes, absolutely, both are true. But like, make sure you have something beside just circus at one point. Like, you don't need to have a career ready, but don't, like, think about things of what would I actually want to do after after my career, or because also often we have time, like when you're on tour and you do shows in the evening, and or when you're lucky enough to get like a contract in a variety show for several months at the same spot. Like you actually have time to figure things out and do other things on the side. A lot of my friends, they do a long distance university or take classes or whatever it is. So I would definitely also tell people, don't wait until it's too late. Like if you're curious about things, start it right away. Don't wait for your active career to be over to start something new.
Oh, that's such good advice. What did you do?
Nothing. That's why I'm giving that advice. No, honestly, it's strange. Like circus for me has always been more than just performing. I was always curious about really everything that from creation to stage management to artistic director to tour director, all of those jobs related to the show, I was really curious in. And then the whole teaching aspect and choreographing aspect. And for me, it was always clear that always clear, at least until now, I cannot see myself go back to university and do something really unrelated to circus or to the performing arts.
Yeah.
It's something that, it was always there. And I'm still, even right now, with it not being easy finding jobs or working at all, or I'm still at a point where I'm like, no, this is definitely going to come back, and there will be people needed that have the expertise that I developed over years, and it's just it just has to come back. So I will do something that is related to the performing arts for years and years.
Oh, absolutely, it will come back.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's already kind of back in different ways, I think.
Yeah, it's back in different ways. I mean, just today, I'm not sure if you heard it, but they're shutting all the gyms down again starting on Thursday. They just announced that, which includes all the circus training spaces.
Someone messaged me actually right before I got on this call. So I didn't hear that.
I didn't. My roommate told me that earlier today, and I tried to research it, and I couldn't find anything. And I was like, I don't think that's true. And then maybe 20 minutes before we started, I actually found it. And they announced that everything is going to close again until like for the next 3 weeks at least. And then they're going to reevaluate. So it's this weird thing at the moment where everybody tries to stay motivated and do things, but the rules change every now and then. So it's also now it's getting colder again. So all those outside projects are kind of done by now or slowly fading out. But it is, there's always need for people to perform and to entertain. And so it's going to come back. It's just, we have to somehow make it through it.
How do we do that, Olaf?
I was about to say, I hope I didn't just ruin your week by telling you this again. But you
didn't not ruin my. I mean, it wasn't you. It would have happened anyway.
It would.
I didn't think it would be live on a podcast. Would I?
Yeah, but it's
so annoying.
It's a thing. Yeah, honestly, really, I don't know what people do. I was talking to. Obviously, most of my friends, they're still performing, and even in the beginning of the summer, like in June, I just went. I have so much respect for you guys still training every day without having any precise goal or show coming up. Like if I wouldn't have stopped performing already a while ago, if I would still be performing and maybe had another year or two in me, I'm pretty convinced that this pandemic, that I would have just decided I can't train like in French, we would say like train in the butter, like when you train for no reason and you're not really going anywhere. I would have not been good enough to do it. So I can just shout out to all the artists and that includes like dancers and singers and everyone else, but people who keep going to studios or train in the park every day just to maintain what their body can do is just, like I can just bow to those people. It's so impressive to me.
So what would be your dream project? Because I do think that these times are good times to dream. Or this is a new hypothesis that I'm coming up with.
Yes, I mean, you're right. Absolutely.
Because I feel like I've lived in like the depression fantasies of like everything's ending, everything's horrible. And then I kind of came to the realization that like if I'm going to live a delusional life, it may as well be a happy one instead of a depressed one all the time.
Absolutely.
So I've been like dreaming up projects, and so it's kind of selfish, or a question coming from a selfish place, but do you have any? Or like wishes to direct?
I mean, right now, honestly, any project that comes to the table would be a dream project, to be quite honest.
Such a good point.
Again, like the realistic German side of me that comes through.
This is such a German answer, yeah.
Really anything by now that would come up where there's the opportunity to be in a room with all kinds of creative people and just do things. I think everybody would just jump on that opportunity. I mean, for sure, for the future, really more circus-specific directing and choreographing or developing concepts for projects or even for one-night events. That's definitely what I love doing. Is absolutely work with artists and make things happen. That's the ideal.
What is that process like to make because I've talked to many people on the show. I've had Gypsy Snyder on. I've had Jesse Dryden, other directors who have talked about kind of like show creation when you're talking about bigger projects.
Yeah.
But what's it like to create for like a one-night event or a gala?
I mean, there are so many answers to that. It really depends on the size, because sometimes people you show up just with one act, and an entire event can just be a 6-minute act with one artist when you work really specifically with that artist. Or back in the days, you work just by yourself. You get the music that you have to use, figure out the costume, figure those things out. When we're talking those bigger events, they can get pretty big pretty fast these days. Like there are events that you could pretty much send on a world tour after, in theory, because the quality and the work that goes into those events are just absolutely insane. And it's almost a shame when you realize that all the work that you have been doing and all the energy and ideas that are in there are for this one performance that a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand people see, and then everybody goes their separate ways. But it can go from anywhere to showing up 3 hours before and creating a quick thing to being in rehearsals over a period of multiple weeks to create this one special thing. And it includes light designers and music composers and video designers and costume designers and set designers. It can get big pretty fast these days. There is surprising.
And does the client give you like a prompt for them, or like some kind of, how do you know what you have to work with?
It's different. Usually there is no usually, but there is a way that either people approach and go, look, this is our event. We want like a 6-minute or a 30-minute or wherever it is. And they ask you to come up with the concept and present it to them. And then they either like this or they don't. And you might get it or someone else might get. So a couple of people sometimes pitch for the same event. Sometimes it's an example that I can give. Last year in Philadelphia, there is a thing that is called Festival, that is from the Philadelphia Fringe Arts Festival. That is the huge closing party of the Fringe in Philadelphia, where they always have over 30 chefs that each prepares one tiny little dish. But there are like 2,000 people in this venue. So there is almost each chef creates 2,000 of those tiny dishes, and people walk around and try each one of those little, specially for this event, created dishes. And they always work with the Circadium, the Philadelphia Circus School, that is there for a couple of years now. And last year they asked me if I would want to direct that event with the Circus School, because usually they would just hire a couple of artists and tell them, you go on now, you go on now. So it was always a little bit random. And last year they tried for the first time to really come up with more of a cohesive concept for the entire event. So I ended up working with the second and third year students from the Circus School in Philadelphia, plus a couple of invited professional artists. I think I had like 25 artists probably.
Wow.
And we worked very close with the artistic director of the festival to make sure that the concept really works with what they had in mind. And pre-production started in February and the event happened in September. So there was like 8 months of talking, and I went to Philadelphia for a first workshop with the artists at the Circus School. And then we had like a month in between, and then went back for another 2 weeks intense just before the event happened. So it can be a very elaborate process creating those events, which is great when you actually have time to get to know the artist and know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and really can create with them and with their bodies, and instead of just showing up with everything already counted out and just telling them what to do. It's always more fun when you can actually really work with the people that you're working with.
Yeah, when you're choreographing, or what is that process like for you? It doesn't sound like you show up with too much of a plan.
I mean, it depends. For sure, I have a plan of what I want to do. Okay. But often because you don't know, or when I'm just going to take this Philly example now because we already talked about it. I didn't know any of those students before. So you can have a great plan in your hand, but then you actually see the students that you're working with and it might not work at all. So you always have to have the flexibility and backup plans of going, okay, well, let's actually just see what there is. So when I started working with them, I mean, obviously, the way that I work is influenced a lot by how the Seven Fingers works, just because I've been with them forever and really appreciate their way of working, and not just coming up with everything done and just telling them this is 5, 6, 7, 8, and you just learn the steps, and that is. So with the kids in the school, I spent the first 5 days really just improvising and doing like dance exercises and acting exercises and movement exercises, and figure out who can sing, who plays an instrument, who has any other tricks or interesting things besides what you would consider circus technique. So really just get to know them, and also try and get an idea about their personalities and what they like, what they don't like. Because I feel like there's nothing worse than a director where you can clearly see that the people on stage really are not enjoying what they're doing. So I always try to make it in a way that, I mean, yes, there has to be someone who leads it, because if there's 30 people and everybody wants to lead everything, that will just end in a disaster. But I think that you can still be open enough and have everybody in mind when you actually create a show so that people are actually happy and having fun, because you will see it if people have fun or not, and the result is just so much better when people actually enjoy what they're doing.
My last question, I give it to every guest, and it's kind of so my last question is, what advice would you give to yourself at the beginning of your career? But you, in the practical German way, have already kind of answered it with a very practical answer, which is, study something else, or kind of look to the future as you're in your career, and take the downtime you have on tours, in contracts, these kinds of things, to, study at university or develop another craft or these kinds of things. But do you have any advice that maybe could be helpful more in like a mindset capacity, or even like with or something that helped you kind of get through the tough times?
Okay, that's a hard one.
Because that's what I need to hear right now with
Yes,
my,
absolutely. That's what we all
I
need to
can't
hear
train
right now.
anymore.
So I'm going to answer this in let's start with if I would have given myself any advice in the beginning, which I definitely would. So one of the things that I realized only after, but I think that's always what you do. Like, I would say use the time, like when I was in the circus school, where you kind of take for granted all that is there, like all the equipment, all the space, all the knowledge that is in this building, which is just insane if you think about the knowledge of all the teachers and even the students and the riggers and whoever works there. There's just so much information that you can get out of there. And I thought I was curious and talked a lot to people and tried to get out of there what I wanted and needed. But looking back at it now, I just went, wow, there was so much more that I could have gotten out of there. Not that it's anything dramatic, but I feel like use the knowledge that is around you, just like suck it up as much as you can, just take it in. And the other thing that I would have probably told myself, which I think the schools are way better with now already than there was back in the days. We had a class that was called anatomy, where we had like in my days, I think it was a professor from a university where we talked really about just the body itself, but it wasn't really something that was like about taking care of your body and doing physiotherapy before you have injuries and doing injury prevention and exercises and taking the 10 minutes every day to do these exercises, even when your body feels great. Like, don't wait for the injuries to come. When you're 20 years old, do those 10 minutes, buy those physio bands and do your shoulder rotators and do all those exercises. I mean, this is just a specific like hand balancing example, but for all disciplines, you all have specific needs. Like, start them. Really, really start taking care of your body before you start feeling your body. It's not because you don't feel it that you don't have to take care of it. That would probably be the biggest thing that I would tell people. But I also really think that nowadays schools are way better with making sure that people are aware of that. So that would be one thing. And then the other, when it comes to a mindset, that's a tough one. I mean, there were definitely moments when I was still in school where I just wanted to just leave and fly back to Germany and do something else with my life, where I just didn't think it would go anywhere. Or, I mean, handstands for me, it was a very, very slow process. So while other people started working on their acts and being creative and had routines, I was still on two arms in the center of the space trying to move my legs around. So there were definitely moments where it's just frustrating, because if you want it or not, you compare yourself to other people. What I tell my students now a lot, I think it's, again, a bit more handstand specific than general for all the training, is take the time to do the exercises the right way. Yes, it's frustrating, and yes, it will take way longer, and you will see people next to you who will progress way faster. But once you do the exercises the right way and you have the good basic knowledge and you can do those basic exercises, you will learn so much faster afterwards. So don't try and look too much to the left and to the right. Do your thing. Make sure you do your thing well, and it will pay off eventually. That sounds so stupid now that I listen to what I say myself, but that's really, I think that's true though. It sounds, if someone would tell me
No,
that, I
it's
would be like,
true.
oh, it sounds
And
so dumb, but it's really, I really believe it.
and that's what's so annoying about the truth, is it can sound so simple and dumb sometimes. But
Yeah, it sounds
maybe if we say it over and over again, someone will hear it.
maybe
Use
we,
good
but
technique.
now it's like to give a, and you can obviously you can cut this out if it makes no sense, but to give a
Sure.
very precise idea of what I mean is, now that I'm teaching handstands, I see people who skip exercises, and when they want to learn a one-arm handstand, as an example, they constantly just lift the arm up and want to stand on one hand, but they stand on one hand for 1 second and they just fall. And they do that same exercise for 3 years, and you see them 3 years later and they still do the same exercise because their body is just not ready and they just skipped a couple of exercises. So do the exercise that comes before that. Like, don't feel bad about not doing the show off thing of your training, but actually learn the one skill and then go to the next, and you will eventually surpass people who will skip exercises. That's for sure. That's basically more what I'm trying to say.
I'm totally keeping that in. That's great advice. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Olaf, it was such a pleasure talking to you today. If we can't train or practice, at least we can talk about circus,
we
right?
can talk, and we should talk to your friends. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I would say invite your friends over to your place and train together, but we're not allowed to do that either at the moment. So yeah, I did actually we did a Zoom training for the St. John's Circus Festival the other week, and one was just with 3 professional hand balancers. And it was so nice for everybody we did it on Zoom, which on one way is absolutely ridiculous because you see everybody small on the computer. But they were actually training while everyone was looking at someone else and go like, oh, I think maybe your shoulder, or try your hip. And we did that for 2 hours and the time just flew by. So find ways of not just training by yourself in your living room. Like, you need to somehow interact with other people, like stay in touch with each other, find ways to make that happen, and just keep on training.
Olaf, thanks so much for the time today.
It's my pleasure.
That was my interview with Olaf Triebel, and I really hope that did for you what it did for me when I first had this interview with him, and also listening to the playback 2 months later really restored and reminded me of the magic in circus, and filled me with so much respect and admiration for the people during this time who are still training and trying to maintain their peak, or at least some semblance of a performance-ready body. And hey, even if you're just getting out of bed every morning and making yourself some coffee, sometimes that's enough. So, medals for the bare minimum as well. This has been a crazy year. Also, towards the end of the interview, Olaf recommended taking the 10 minutes to do your physios, not just when your body was feeling terrible, but before, when your body's feeling good. The reason that I took such a long break for all of November is because The Artist Athlete is coming out with a line of activities called shoulder bars, and the shoulder bar is designed to help you do just that. Take care of your shoulders while they're still healthy and feeling good, so you can use them for the circus for years to come. To find out more information about Shoulder Bar and the rest of The Artist Athlete, products, ebooks, workshops, everything else that I have to offer through this company that I love running so much, you can go to theartistathlete.com. On Instagram, I'm at _artist_athlete, and I'm on Facebook, The Artist Athlete. If you love what you're listening to and want to support the podcast, please, please, please go to patreon.com/theartistathlete and make a pledge today. Thanks for listening, friends, fans, and enemies. Foes. Ugh, it's so weird to say. I'll talk at you next week. The Artist Athlete podcast is supported solely by donations from people like you. Here's what some of those people have to say.
Hi everyone, I'm Dominique, a ground acrobat, trapeze artist, and coach, currently bringing circus to the extremely cold but very beautiful Northern Ontario, Canada. Circus has changed my life and I'm so grateful to everyone in this community. Find me on Instagram at DomUpsideDown or my website domupsidedown.com.
Hi everyone, this is Allie Cooper, owner and coach at the Radical Movement Factory in Santa Cruz, California. I love supporting the Artist Athlete podcast and the amazing community Shannon has created here. I teach rope and fabric and have a circus conditioning app available on iTunes called CIRCUS+. You can follow me on Instagram at AllieCooper_, and if you find yourself in California, come say hi.
Hi, I'm Leah. I hate conditioning. So I created the ABCs of Fitness, a fun, full program of active flexibility, body weight, and cardio with personal daily check-ins to motivate you wherever you are and whatever discipline you do. Join our next 19-day check-in challenge and slide into my DMs on Instagram at ABCs of Fitness.
Aloha! My name is Beth Russell, and I live on the beautiful island of Maui, Hawaii. I am an aerial artist and movement instructor specializing in chakra yoga to keep me balanced and grounded. I play with silks, trapeze, lyra, rope, acro, aerial yoga and dance, slacklining, pole, bungee, and climbing. Really anything that goes up and allows me to explore 3D space. You can find my dedicated aerial page on Instagram at Maui Aerialist. If you find yourself coming to Maui, let's play.
Hey there, friends, fans, and enemies. This is Chris Alston, Patreon of the Artist Athlete podcast, straps artist and lyra performer and acrobat out of Greenville, South Carolina. So if you're ever passing through, make sure to stop in and see me and my friends. We have a wonderful space, and we'd love to see you.
Hi, my name is Erica Lee. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm an aerialist. I teach performing arts to elementary school during the day and do pole and sling and rope by night. I really, really like the Artist Athlete podcast because it gives me a lot of circus goals to look forward to. It gives me a lot of insight on what's going on around the world in circus, and that's why I'm Patreon.
Hello all. Thank you for tuning in to the Artist Athlete podcast. I am Opal Schwartz from Minneapolis, Minnesota. If you're ever in the city, feel free to stop by the Aviary Minneapolis. It's a great time. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and goodbye.
Hey there, artists and athletes. This is Andy Smith, owner and artistic director at Saltaire Circus School in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. And I want to thank you for contributing to the Artist Athlete podcast. If you ever find yourself down in Florida, come check us out. Whether you're an artist, athlete, or someone ordinary just looking to be extraordinary, we got a place for you.